Hello, Internet.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going, YouTube? How's it going, Facebook? How's it going, Instagram, Friendster, MySpace, Kazaa, Napster, LimeWire, FrostWire, and all in between? We're just on YouTube. That's our main platform. So we are going to have probably a longer video today. It is the best albums of the year, brought to you by yours truly, and also yours also truly, who is not speaking, but the other one.
oh yes, that would be me. Yes, thank you
Yes.
for joining us. We're D minus chats, and we love music so much. We want to talk about it as much as we can on the internet, and so we have both calculated and we've come up with our top 10 albums of 2017.
All right, Brian. Before we get off on the wrong foot, before we get started, you had one honorable mention for the year. Would you like to enlighten us?
I'd like to enlighten you first.
Uh-oh. What
Because
does that mean?
I don't have one honorable mention. I have two honorable
Oh my God.
hmm
Let's do it. What are your honorable mentions?
Well, here's one of them. Okay, this was an album that was so hyped when it came out. It is the debut solo album from One Direction's Harry Styles, self-titled album, and it was basically labeled as this sort of indie-ish alternative dream pop-esque album, and it totally was. Only thing is, and while it was so well produced and well executed by Harry and his team, kind of missed the mark a little bit for me. Only because just personal preferences. It was just kind of really boring. But the atmospheric element was phenomenal. I thought it was great. So it is an honorable mention. My second one is one that I actually heard today and found out that it came out back in October. And this is exciting and interesting, given that the band it is, I hated. They are.
Oh my God.
It's a band called Citizen.
Oh shit. Do they have a new album?
They do. You would love it. You would.
I already can tell you I like Citizen. I didn't know they had a new album.
I didn't know you liked Citizen.
I do. I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but I like everything I've heard.
I cannot find album art, unfortunately, but it's called As You Please, and it's so good because I had heard some things before from them, and then I saw them open up a day at Riot Fest in Chicago, and I was like, wow, these guys are awful. I'm like, well, these guys like hardcore. They're not, but they sound like they like it. And they just put out an album of some of the best alternative rock I've heard in a long time, and they matured themselves, and it just sounds like something that Turnover would do, if I can make that kind of correlation.
Okay.
It's good. It's really, really good.
Nice. I'm pissed that I didn't know that Citizen had a new album. I would have listened to that one. Maybe it would have made my list. Maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know. Okay. I've got 4. I'll go brief. The first one is, I don't have the album art on me, but Death Grips EP they dropped this year, Steroids, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Gabber. 22-minute EP of just the most fucking whacked out like shit that you could get from their last album, just all crammed into 22 minutes. I liked it a lot. I didn't like enough to have it on my list, but I appreciate everything they do. They're inventive, and as long as they keep inventing, I'll always enjoy their shit. So it was good. It just wasn't the best that they do, but I like everything they do, so that's cool.
Really quick, I know you try to keep it short. I'm sorry. Do you think it was because it was too short?
No, I don't think so. I think it wasn't. I think they took some of the stuff they did on Bottomless Pit from the year prior, and it was like it reminded me a lot of what they did on songs like Hothead, and which was like one of my least favorite songs from that album. Unfortunately, they were trying to be like really, really caustic and really, really like weird samples and sounds, which can be done that cool in the past. But I just didn't like the execution of it too terribly much. I thought it was a little like harsh for the sake of being harsh, which they don't need to do. I mean, they compose very well. So that whole idea, to me, it came across a little bit forced. So when I heard it, I listened to Steroids a few times, and every time it was always just like, they could have done better. They could have composed it a little bit better to me. So I liked it. I mean, I think it was a really interesting experiment, and I think the way they compose is great, even when they're not at their best. So it's cool. It's just not my favorite Death Grips by like a long shot. Cool. That said, next album I have on my honorable mentions is the noisy sludge band Primitive Man with their new album Caustic. Really awesome. Another one of those bands that I thought would be probably even cooler to see live than on album. Really aggressive, really just like like very, very aggressive stuff. And it was cool. It was very noisy. I liked it. Kind of halfway through, it was like, okay, it's one mode, So, but it was for what it is. I think it's cool. It's very heavy. Next one I have is Poppy, that Poppy with her new album Poppy Computer. Good, not great. Didn't love it as much as her old stuff. A little too composed, not as organic as some of her older stuff, etc., etc. And the fourth album, what was the fourth honorable mention I have? Yes, Dale Crover, the drummer from the Melvins. He's played with Nirvana. Yeah. His solo album, That Fickle Finger of Fate. And cool album, alternative rock album. I was expecting it to be heavier or weirder, and it wasn't. It was just kind of a cool, interesting, straight-ahead alt rock album. Liked it a lot. Really cool to hear him doing his own stuff rather than being with the Melvins. And but didn't stack up enough to me. Okay, you go on with your number 10. We're beginning now.
Here we go. Here's the list, and I guess we'll both lightly touch on each album as we go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So starting at my number 10, I'm not sure if you know these guys. They're from France, extreme metal band. They're called Igor.
Not an extreme metal band. They're kind of an extreme metal band.
What are they exactly?
They're a weird kind of breakcore. That's what I'd always call them. I think they have a lot in their breakcore roots. I think they very much, that's where they stem from. I forget the name of the guy. It's one guy mainly who does the pro. You go on. I'm sorry. This is your...
Well, no, it's okay, sure. I'm not familiar with the term breakcore, so I'll need more time with that. But what the album Savage Sinusoid, Savage
Sabbath, my favorite Merciful Fate song.
It basically combines everything from certain extreme metal elements to classical inspired operatic vocals, very soft and delicate, to a very harsh, almost electronica, but very noisy and very glitchy. And this one track called Robert. Or in France, Robert.
Nice.
Right? That is the glitchiest track, and it's probably the most harsh you'll find on the album. And it's the whole album is just a trip, and it's a very confusing and at times very grating and abrasive listen. Well, sign me up.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So Igor is at number 10 for me.
Nice. My number 10 is an album that actually earlier on into the year, it was a little higher, but it didn't have, to me, the staying ability as some of the other albums on the list. And that would be, I just got to pull up the picture, which would be the new album, the sophomore album by Lorde, Melodrama. Really cool, interesting, adventurous pop album. I've always been invested in what she did. I liked her first album, Pure Heroine. I thought that was cool. And this album it was interesting because Royals came out on Pure Heroin, and everyone was like, "Oh, Lord, Royals!" And now this new album, Melodrama, came out, and it wasn't the singles that were like, people were like crazy about. It was the whole album, and so which was cool to me. I thought that like because the whole album is pretty consistently good. Really interesting, cool, well composed pop tracks. I liked Green Light a lot. My favorite being Liability. I think is really catchy, very. It's good. It's a good pop album, you know. So it's a very nice like art pop album. Appreciated. Thumbs up. That's my number 10.
Nice. Okay, on to number 9 for me. Great blues rock band. They're called Five Horse Johnson with Jake Leg Boogie. And they've had other releases to date. This is probably the one that's been hyped up the most since its release. And Five Horse Johnson, you know, the thing is, a lot of bands who incorporate the blues sound also incorporate that into like a hard rock or like some sort of metal, if you would. But these guys aren't afraid to just kind of be a blues band. Some rock and roll influences, but their main thing is blues, and they do that so well. For four, fairly young guys being a modern band now in this age of rock, they are really passionate about their blues influences, and it really shows there. So Five Horse Johnson, the album Jake Leg Boogie, is number 9.
Nice. My number 9, also kind of a band that not blues per se, but also kind of has an interesting throwback to older sounds, is the artist known as Nate Smith, contemporary jazz artist. I believe he is he a saxophone player? Who's to say? Not I. Really awesome, interesting jazz album. It's not just a bunch of jazz worship that you often find on a lot of jazz records that come out nowadays of like Coltrane or Ellington or something. He very much is an artist who keeps up with the contemporary modifications and like inventions in like electronic music, in contemporary rock and folk and stuff like that. And if I didn't mention the name of the album, it's Kinfolk, Postcards to Everywhere. And someone who composes in his own style. He has a lot of really interesting time signatures and tempos on this album that like can be really unique, and awesome jazz album. Doesn't sound like a lot of other jazz has been coming out recently. Very appreciated. Nate Smith, number 9.
Nice. Okay, cool. We're chugging along, aren't we?
We are. Chug, chug, chug.
Here we go. Number 8. Oh, yeah. It feels good to listen to this one and to hear the name Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, or OMD again. But take some phenomenal British synth pop, sophistopop, and put it into 2017, and you get the Punishment of Luxury. And I've actually shouted this one out on a recent episode of D-, where we did another review. And the thing about OMD and that particular album is, one, kind of bummed because it wasn't hyped. It was just not hyped. I don't even think OMD fans know they have an album. It's just not hyped or publicized. Totally unfair. It's a phenomenal album. The soundscapes and the textures are so rich and elegant and thick and dense, and nothing is too overpowering. And do you like that?
Thick and dense, and architecture.
My wife.
Soundscapes, morality.
I think one of the biggest things that I love about the album that I hyped up last time we spoke about it is The Punishment of Luxury is a long album, and it touches upon a lot. It's a very dynamic album. So while you have some parts that are so sweet synth pop happy, you get some really dramatic parts also that are at times very cinematic. And then there are also a couple of like rather noisy, like they really experiment. It's a very experimental album. So I love this modernization of OMD, and again, a name that isn't really heard much anymore.
It's true.
So, yeah.
It wasn't even heard in the 80s as much as it should have been, I thought. They had the one song.
That's it. Like, it's not even fair.
It's not.
Those, like, one-hit wonder bands. Have you ever listened to Aha aside from Take On Me? Not that good. Moving on.
Gary Newman's good. He had a new album. It was okay. All right. So number 7 for me is the new album of grindcore power violence. I'd probably call them grindcore band, Full of Hell. They made 2 LPs this year, one being this one, Trumpeting Ecstasy, another one being a split with The Body, which they have done before. I liked the split with The Body. The album Trumpeting Ecstasy to me is a lot better. It's very much an album that is from the beginning to the end. It goes for the throat. It doesn't let up. It is an album that will just pummel from track to track, whether it be a 35-second track or like a 3-minute track. It'll just be aggressive. It's very dynamic, as much as grindcore can be. You know, it has a lot of different ideas and thoughts put into this. It's not like a band like fucking Ass Suck or something where it's just kind of bullshit. I'm sorry, I don't like Ass Suck.
It's a real band?
Oh yeah. Ass Suck is like one of those like old like 90s grindcore bands like Insect Warfare and all them.
Making up a hypothetical grindcore band with a fake name.
No, Ass Suck is real.
That case.
And they suck ass, actually.
Yeah.
Hey, crazy. I don't like him. Some people do. Okay, I'm sorry. Hello. So the new album by Full of Hell, Trumpeting Ecstasy. Really, really great. Hold on. I actually want to shout out my favorite track from the album. I have it written down. My favorite track from the album is The Cosmic Vein. That's a really, really interesting song. Yeah, I mean, the whole album is really, really cool and really interesting, aggressive grindcore that I wish they'd done more. I think they're a little inconsistent in their discography and quality. I think sometimes they have better albums, sometimes they have worse ones. But this probably is one of my favorites of theirs. I really like this one. So yeah, Full of Hell.
Nice, cool. Did you say that was number 7 for you? Is that what we're up to?
Wait, am I wrong? Hold on, let me check.
I think so, because I'm on my number 7.
That was number 8. I'm sorry. Did I say number 7? That was number 8.
Okay, cool. No worries. So Full of Hell was number 8 for you. And so it is time for me to give you my number 7. Are you excited for my number 7? As I join
as excited as I can be.
On my phone? Okay, cool. This is something that one of our friends showed us at the same time. And Glassjaw.
Hell yeah.
Glassjaw, yes. Back with Material Control. I love this album cover, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great album. I looked at 1993.
Yeah, that's good. Me too. Okay. Good Lord, Glassjaw. First off, this album is so heavy. And you know what's great about that? The heaviness is not overstated. This isn't an album that's like, oh, we're going to be heavy and loud and aggressive. It's like, no, this is heavy and loud, but not that it's dialed back. It's just handled really responsibly and tastefully.
Handled tastefully. My wife. I'm sorry. Please continue.
It's a very tasteful album by Glassjaw, and really happy that their material has brought them to these songs now in 2017. Great step for them, and great return to material for them, really, and happy for
control of material.
Your number 7?
My number 7 is from a noise rock band from Philadelphia that I've been following for a little while now. Piss Jeans with Why Love Now. I first heard the single, The Bar Is Low, and I was did you get the Snapchat I sent you yesterday? of like
Yeah.
the dude in the gym, like on the bench, like
Oh yeah.
that's from the music video from "The Bar Is Low" by Piss James. Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they're so fucking weird. They do not take themselves seriously. They and simultaneously make really awesome, really straight ahead, like Flipper, Jesus Lizard inspired noise rock. That just it's interesting because it's very them. They have a sound that's kind of all their own. It's not too much on the Jesus Lizard worship, which is nice, which a lot of noise rock bands can fall into. But it at the same time, there's no like pretensions about it. There's no trying to be anything more than just a fucking noise rock band from Philadelphia, which I think is really nice. Like you can tell they listen to a lot of Melvins too, you know, just being like weird and quirky and having that just aggressive, like we're trash and we're glad about it, you know. Great songs, really interesting and well composed songs that I missed. I will say that they did have a unique change in direction because this album, different than their like last album, Honeys, in that this new album has more of an alternative rock sensibility to it, and the songs are composed in a more way that is more digestible and acceptable to mainstream rock fans. Not sacrificing quality at all, but it's definitely dialed their just ferocity back. But in so doing, having like really cool, straight ahead composed noise rock songs, quality that I missed in their earlier few albums, like King of Jeans, and yeah. The song "Love Without Emotion," particularly being a good example of that, like really good alternative rock sensibility inserted into noise rock. Really awesome album. Very glad they released this one. It's very refreshing hearing this one after not being too impressed with Honeys a few years ago.
All right, cool. Let's see. We're up to number 6 on our top albums of 2017. This is the first album list I've ever made, not just on Deep Honest with You, but just in general, where an indie album is included. Oh, I like these guys quite a bit. Found out about them recently. Manchester Orchestra, and their album is called A Black Mile to the Surface. Oof. Basically, the biggest thing is instrumentation. Biggest thing with them is arrangement. Of the songs, composition-wise, they are so beautifully composed, and it lacks the pretentious nature of certain indie projects.
The Antlers.
I don't
like that.
Don't like that. No.
You like that. You like that.
This doesn't have that. It's yeah. And it also does. It doesn't have the style of indie singing that I like to refer to as what do I call it?
Closed mouth sad.
Closed mouth sad. Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that. No, they actually like project and they sound really good when they sing, and it's not a turnoff. And the lyrics aren't even a turnoff. They're good. They're really well done. And so this is just something that I'm happy it was more accessible to me, but the reason that it's number 6 on my list is purely the orchestration because it's so brilliant. Pardon my outburst.
Okay, hello. Can I ask a question about this album that I've been meaning to ask you? I haven't listened to it, but does the orchestration and everything on this album remind you at all of like a band, like another indie band with really interesting orchestration that you like the Decemberists?
Yeah, oh, totally. Yeah.
Nice.
I would say less experimental.
Okay.
It was a little less, hey, let's try didgeridoo on this track. But it was just, but what I loved about this, similar to the Decemberists, is that you have very thick soundscapes that are just, you can't escape them. There's a magnetism there that I'm fascinated by. So an intriguing album to say the least. And if you're an indie fan, you might not even like them because, well, I don't know. They're whatever. Who gives a fuck? Manchester Orchestra. I'm sorry.
spooking me all the time. All right, next album. What are we on? 6?
6.
All right, I'm gonna say this fucking album right. This is Igloo Ghost's new album, Neo Wax Bloom. That's it. Neo Wax Bloom. That's the name. Really good album, man. Like an IDM album that I think clearly takes influence from bands like I saw a lot of like Venetian Snares, Flying Lotus, and also I'd say even One Tricks Point Never to some extent. I think, really awesome album. I first heard them on their EP Chinese New Year that they dropped a couple years ago. And this has everything, man. This is like an album that is rooted in the whole idea of IDM, but samples and sounds and weird textures and compositions and everything. It's so colorful. It's like a painting. It's wild. It's super wild. It's just like the guy composes like no one else you've ever heard. Very unique stuff. And I was very impressed with the new album. I think most of the stuff that I've heard by Igloo Ghost tends to be really interesting and creative. But this one particularly, I think, is very much an album that sounds like the guy is like really developing a cohesive like sound now. Something that I think maybe he's been trying to do, but it sounds like he's kind of coming into his own now. And it's really cool. It reminds me of Igor if they were more of an totally electronic band. I mean, Igor does have electronic in them, but yeah, yada, yada, yada. But yeah. So my number 6 is Igloo Ghost with Neo Wax Bloom.
Nice. That's also one of my saved albums that I have to listen to, most likely at work tomorrow. Along with another one that you will touch upon soon. Yes. We have hit the top 5.
Oh boy. Oh baby. Oh Bambi.
Here we go. I was so late to the party on this one, and I was upset because I love the artist. So I think this is the first album of his credited with his backing band, the 400 Unit. It's Jason Isbell. And the album, The Nashville Sound, this is, well, he's basically a country folk singer-songwriter. That's the bare bones of it, and the strength of the album is the songwriting. Here's the thing. Dude won awards. Guy won a Grammy, I believe it was, for his last album, Something More Than Free, and the hype around that album when it first came out and then in the months after its release was up there, and definitely in the community of his genre, which I guess people are just calling him Americana, so what the fuck, I don't care. But in that circle, you just couldn't escape that album, and so it's like, well, now how to follow that up. And I think this is a great follow-up because I loved Something More Than Free. And I love this one, The Nashville Sound. Again, his songwriting just is the star of the entire album. It opens with a very mellow, pretty much straight acoustic, almost ballad. That's how it opens. But his writing
interesting.
It still ropes you in. It's called The Last of My Kind, which I thought was a brilliant song. If We Were Vampires is probably one of the best songs I've heard all year. And a couple of songs kind of missed the mark for me. But as far as I'm concerned, really, this Jason Isbell record, The Nashville Sound, is a can't miss, especially if you just want to hear some strong writing.
That's awesome. All right. We shall continue with my number 5, which is the new album, which is a follow-up to 2013's All We Love, We Leave Behind, Converge's The Dusk in Us. They dropped an EP earlier in the year with 2 songs on it, both of which I was like, this is great. I was actually going to put that EP on the list if they didn't come out with another album. I thought it was, those 2 songs were so goddamn good. And it turns out it was a single. Who knew? But like the first song on the album ended up being on this album, which is, hey, more for me, you know. So I was very pleased with the quality of this album. Converge generally is very consistent as far as like a metal and metalcore band goes. They will usually come out with an album that I think is at least good, many of which I think are great. And this one really ranks with me. And what I've seen, a good amount of Converge fans online that I've seen are like saying this is one of the better albums they've come out with. And generally, I tend to agree. There are some songs that I think do kind of lack, kind of like the Jason Isbell album you were just mentioning. But generally, the songs that are good are really good. And there are some of the better Converge tracks that have come out in a long time. So I'm definitely very happy with their new release. They didn't really fuck up too much. Very emotionally gripping. It really grabs you, this album, with the lyrics, and the vocal performance in general, as always, is fantastic. And just the instrumentation of this album's, it is what All We Love We Leave Behind wanted to be. And they really just they nailed it on this one, and I'm very, very pleased. So that's my number 5, is Converge, The Dusk in Us.
Nice. Okay, cool. On to number 4. And this was one of your honorable mentions. And I thought it's an album that we reviewed together. You know, I was kind of surprised. And you know what? Maybe we could have a conversation about this
Let's do it
while we do it. But
sure.
Yeah, Poppy Computer.
Yeah.
I thought that you liked it more than, well, I mean, definitely at the time, we seem to have both liked it.
I did like it. That's why it was an honorable mention. The reason that I didn't have it on my list finally is because I think that a lot of the songs that are on it didn't have much staying power to me. I think that some of the songs, like the opener, I'm Poppy, I think that song did. That song remains an earworm to me today, you know. But I think a lot of them, like Moshi Moshi and Computer Boy, were very cool initially, but over time, the more I revisited the album, the more I personally didn't connect with the songs as much as when I first heard it. That's the reasoning. I still think it's good. I still think it's a good album, but to me, it just didn't have that sort of connection that I had initially. That's why I didn't put it on my list.
Okay. It was essentially the opposite for me, and I think I have a hypothesis as to why, but there are certain hooks that are complete earworms that even to this day I absolutely they'll just like seep into my headspace. And the opener on Poppy, as you've alluded to, but definitely let's make a video. I love My Style. Crazy.
That's a good
song. Yeah. Moshi Moshi, I enjoy Computer Boy, and I remember a lot of the hooks. I think it's very memorable to me. Reason I say that I think I know why is because a lot of the albums that I have touched upon on my list so far, and also just the ones I've listened to this year that I've really enjoyed, are a little bit on the heavier side as far as subject matter. You're probably, if you're watching this, you're probably thinking, how in God's name did Poppy rank higher than Jason Isbell and Manchester Orchestra? It's because this isn't heavy at all. It's not. If those are whiskey, this is a big goddamn milkshake. And sometimes I need that. Like,
I fucking love milkshakes. What the? That's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, I loved the well, first off, I loved, again, Brian, talk about synth textures. Okay. I love the synth textures.
You did it. You did it. You said you were going to do it, and you totally did it. Good job.
Yep. Okay, number 3.
Oh my God. Okay. Me? Is it my turn?
Yes, sure.
Oh,
Wait,
shit.
no. This is number 4. Sorry.
Well, don't lying to the public. You're a public liar. Okay. So, God. So, full disclosure, we filmed this video already. Okay, like I'm gonna admit to the world, we filmed this video already. it was in such bad quality for whatever reason. We needed to redo it, and so we're redoing it. But imagine my anger. Just, if you please, a moment of your time. Imagine my anger when. Okay. So my number 4 is Igor's Savage Sinusoid. When Brian first said that Igor's Savage Sinusoid ranked on his list, he had the audacity to then follow that up with, "Hey, have you ever heard of this band before?" And I was like, "You fucking." There's a lot of bands I never mention. I don't know, but I was irate. I was simply incensed, but I couldn't admit why, because the list was initially a surprise. So I was like, "Yeah, I've heard of them." But any hooser, right? Savage Sinusoid to me ranks. I was blown away by this album because a lot like Igloo Ghost's progression they've had. Igor has been a really, really awesome band. I didn't check out their album previous to Savage Sinusoid, but the one previous to that I really liked. And they've had a similar progression where it sounds like they're trying to do a similar thing where they're like they have this like everything but the kitchen sink mentality of composing music, and they have been progressing into this kind of
sinusoid,
a savage one at that, and they're making their sound completely their own. It sounds like after X amount of years, they have kind of the of like, okay, we know how we're going to compose music now. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. And this one to me is like so awesome. It just sounds like they really got their shit together and they're composing in a way they're comfortable with now, which is great. It's a really, really enjoyable and interesting and unique method to compose. Because like what Brian touched on, they have like these Chopin influenced romantic piano parts right next to like breakcore and death metal. And it just works, you know what I mean? And they have the vocalist from Cattle Decapitation come in halfway through the album. It's awesome, man. If you like music that like really will reach for like interesting influences, that'll like kind of like a Mr. Bungle on steroids or something, you know. This is an album that really I was very glad to have heard this year. My favorite on the album was the song Spaghetti Forever.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah, great songs. Really, really good songs. And I'm very pleased to have heard this one this year. So that was my number 4. Igor. Savage. Yeah, that's a good one too with the scream. Yeah, Igor, Savage Sinusoid. So yeah, that's mine.
All right. So on to number 3, which was almost Poppy Computer, but I couldn't, in good conscience, put that above Chris Stapleton, the award-winning and nominated From a Room Volume 1 and Volume 2, a double album that was released this year, Volume 1 back in May, and then Volume 2 on December 1st. So I bought both. They're great. They're great. It's, you know, if Jason Isbell was the songwriting, this is the songwriting mixed with the attitude, mixed with just great raw vocals that Chris Stapleton is one of the, I think, best natural vocals on record that might be out there. And again, the range. So you do have some very traditional country. There's also a really great Willie Nelson cover on Volume 1, but you have some really heavy soul also. You have a little bit of just kind of alternative rock that is a little bit grungy and doesn't really have much of a place anywhere else, but it's great. And then some ballads also that he just does great. And vocally, he's kind of a chameleon. He can pretty much fit anywhere. And great double album, and very deserving of all of the accolades it has received.
Nice. Cool. Very cool. I'm glad to hear that an album of such quality is getting recognition. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Such is the case of this next album, which is unfortunately criminally overlooked. I think this was when this came out in the first part of the year, and for many months it stayed at my number one, which was the second album, the sophomore album of Brooklyn noise rock band Couch Slut. Couch Slut. This is it's called Contempt. Their first one, My Life as a Woman. Gross, really gross. It has this like, so it's noise rock, but it has a really clear big influence of like noisy like doom metal and sludge. They really like have these really gross, aggressive guitars and guitar tones that really like beat you down with a damn hammer. And they have a lot. They have
sludge. Am I right?
Oh,
sorry.
No, it's fine. I thought it was fun. Very introspective and disturbed lyrics from the front woman whose name escapes me, unfortunately. I'm bad with band members. But lyrics that involve some of the like the grossest and like most disturbing parts of, I think, her psyche, or at least it seems to be. I don't know the damn person, but really intense. It's very intense. And this new one, polished. You know, it's similar intensity, but still like it seems more produced than their last album, which I think has its pros and cons. It doesn't have that like primitivity that seems like that went on in the last album, but in the same token, like this new one has just as much ferocity. It doesn't let up on it being kind of disturbed, and it will smash your fucking face in. It's a really good listen to. One of the most interesting and intense noise rock bands coming out right now. Yeah, I really dug it. Like track for track, I thought it was very, very good. Yeah, Couch Slut, Contempt.
Nice. Cool. All right, on to number two. You know, I was doing some thinking actually about this one. Artist's name is Kip Moore, and he is a modern country artist. And at number two is Slow Hard, which would have probably been
Low Hard?
Slow Hard. Slow Hard.
Slow Hard. Blow Heart. I'm sorry. Can you please say something so the screen goes off me? Now I'm embarrassed.
Slow Hard would have been number one for me had the number one not been released this year. But back when we did a best of 2015, his prior album Wild Ones was my number one. Mm-hmm. Because I love his songwriting. Again, going back to the Jason Isbell thing, it's the songwriting. I get that, of course. And Kip Moore for me, and I think some people would disagree, but I think Kip Moore is right up there in that game with the Chris Stapletons and the Jason Isbells and everything. So when I heard that he was selecting songs that he had written for a new album, needless to say, I was hyped, and it's so good. It's a little bit longer. Actually, no, it's the same length. Sorry, 13 tracks, but whatever. You get so much out of this album, because if you go from lighthearted semi-party songs that are lyrically still pretty poignant and clever and well executed to some really heavy and emotional tracks, and everything in between, and some that are kind of like cynical in a fun way, if I dare say. Kip Moore can do it, and I don't think Jason Isbell can, and I don't think Chris Stapleton can.
Oh shit.
So yeah, it's the range of songwriting on here, and it's front to back, all phenomenal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Number two.
Mm-hmm.
Mentioned already. However, I will mention it a second time. The new Glassjaw, man, was so good. This Material Control by Glassjaw. It's awesome. It's so cool because one of the things I really appreciated was they're doing a similar thing to what other band did that I mentioned? To like Piss Jeans, where like they're just chilling out on their sound, but they're making the composition that much cooler. You know, I mean, the other stuff they'd released previously in their career, like all you ever wanted to know about Silence and that shit, it's heavy as fuck. It's like undeniably metalcore. You know what I mean? It's ferocious. And this new album is great and it's heavy and loud, but in a totally like different way. It's like much more like heavy post-hardcore sort of thing. I think that's a awesome direction for them to go in because clearly they can do it so well, you know, which is not to disparage any of their metalcore stuff, which is also excellent. They generally album to album are great, but this new one, it reveals a different side of the band that I think I'm really excited to see in the future because some of while it's heavy and aggressive, you can see the like intricacies and the details of their songwriting that you weren't able to see as well before. Like some of the riffs they made, some of the like rhythms they had, very interesting. And it was a little drowned out on their metalcore. And with this album, you can see what kind of songwriters they are, what kind of performers they are, which I think is really, really awesome. And it's great. They really nail it. And yeah, it's such a cool album. I'm very, very into it. So yeah, that's my number 2 is Glassjaw's new album.
All right, number 1, top album of 2017. I said it, but I've already talked about it on a prior episode, and I already said this was going to be my top album of the year, and it still is. I'm going to preface it by saying I love Steve Martin.
He's a jerk. He's the jerk.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Another one of my favorite Steve Martin movies is with John Candy, and it's called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I haven't seen that one. I have seen Bowfinger.
Okay, that's fine, I guess.
I didn't like it.
Chubby Rain.
Martin.
I'm going to get back to Steve Martin in a second.
Okay.
Lion Eyes from Maryland. Pretty obscure rock band. They released Nuclear Soul this year. This is a band that for years upon years upon years played reggae rock. Like unapologetically, and they were really good at it too because they were a little bit sci-fi. They kept the sci-fi elements and they were like, well, let's do Deep Purple now. And essentially that's what they did, and they have a very bluesy inspired hard rock, one of the greatest organ players that you could come across is in this band.
Wow.
And everything from like whacked out sci-fi lyrics to a vocal flow, and the melodies are so catchy, and gosh, the ballads are soulful in the vein of like Joe Cocker, and I'm like, man, musically this has everything that I love. Not just a few things I love, just about everything I love. And then the song March of the Clones came on, where the first line of the chorus is clones, drones, and automobiles.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
I was like, there's a band in Maryland who's thinking of me. And not really.
So for me, just a moment, you cut out for a second on my end. So what I heard was, there's a band that married me. Is that what you said?
No.
What did you say?
If I did cut out, I said there's a band, and when I heard that line, I was like, there's a band in Maryland that's thinking of me.
They are.
It's like,
they thought of you.
There's this fucking guy in Jersey that if we just take, like, he would probably like this whole album, so let's like write it for him. And
Nice. Very nice of them.
it felt customized, pretty much.
It's like your troll avatar on in Elder Scrolls. You're a dark elf. You're a dwarf. You're a legend.
Yeah.
You're a hero.
So
Very
there
nice.
you have it. That's
Very
my
nice.
number one.
All right, I'm about to be as much of a fan of this album, as a matter of fact. You already know what it is. You don't. I've never mentioned this on the channel before. You will in a second. So not you already. You will know what it is. You will know what it is. It doesn't. Y'all ready? It's not as punctual. You will know what it is. That sounds very stupid. However, it's the truth. You will know what it is now. It's the new album by Machine Girl. Because I'm young, arrogant, and hate everything you stand for. Yeah, got it. Okay. So this band, man, I listened to not their first album, but the album that kind of broke them into the indie underground, Wolf Girl, that was released when it came out. It was like 2010 or 2011 or 2012 or something. And I was like, yeah, it's good. I like the song Ginger Claps. I thought that was a cool song. But I liked what they were doing. I liked the idea of having another one of these everything but the kitchen sink mentalities of just like aggressive, like noisy electronic music with taking different influences from different places, mostly electronic. So they'd have a lot of like wonky, and they had a lot of also breakcore, and they'd have a lot of noise and like music like that. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. I like it. And then they came out with an album a couple years later. I didn't even listen to it because I was like, it's probably good. And they came out with this shit, and I don't know what drove me to listen to it, but everyone started talking about this band, and I was like, okay, it's time for me to check it out, I guess. And from the first song, man, I was like, these guys have changed their sound, and they're so good now, man. It's unbelievable. Every track is so aggressive, and they got more of a punk influence, and they got more of a metal influence, and they got all these things together. It makes them sound like Death Grips and the Atari Teenage Riot started fucking. And it's so, oh God, post-orgasm of a band. It hurts me. It makes me feel pained after I ejaculate. Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry. Hey, how's it going, children out there watching this video? How are you? Don't ask your parents what an orgasm is. I don't even know. It's such a cool album, man. From every song is so aggressive, and they never let up. Just the front to back, it's just aggression the whole time. Different songs of different textures and different rhythms, and they do intensity differently every song. But as a project, it stays on like 10 the entire way. And man, songs like Dumbass are undeniably awesome. And that might be my favorite song of the year, to be honest with you. I just am so into this album. I'm really, really happy that I came across it, because I was like this close to being like, yeah, it's probably just another Machine Girl album, but it's not. It's something, it's an entirely different animal, as they say. So, yeah, it's my number one. Because I'm young, arrogant, and hate everything you stand for.
By Machine Girl.
By Machine Girl. God damn it.
That's also my on my saved list to listen to at work this week, so I'm excited for that.
You should. I think it's short. I think it's only like 30 minutes or so. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, but in any case, in any event, yeah, this is us, and we are D-, and this was 2017 for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, hey, man, follow us on Twitter at D- Chats. Like us on Facebook, D- Chats. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You're probably watching this. If you haven't subscribed to us, do it. You're there. You're watching this video. This is on YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're in your computer.
Yeah. And coming in the near future, we're going to venture further into 2018 with more album reviews as they come out. We're going to do our best to stay current on that. And again, it's all genres. You know, we spoke a lot about a lot of different genres that we like, particularly in this video, but we do not discriminate. Everything comes to us, and we come at everything. We come on everything. Hello, how are you?
We have anti-discrimination laws. We will touch everything, no matter what the person. We will touch every human who is releasing an album right now. I'm going to shake the many hands of the people around me. That's all I can say. Yeah, so we're D- Chats. And have a good night.
Bye.